Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Courtney Porcella, and I am the Director of Marketing here at Aware Manager. Before we get started on today's presentation regarding key performance indicators and how to select those metrics that really help you manage, I just wanted to go over a few quick housekeeping items. So first, we have plenty of time at the end of the webinar today for questions, so please feel free to enter those into the questions panel. If we don't get to any of the questions that are asked today, somebody will definitely follow up with you later in the day or tomorrow on a one-on-one basis to answer anything that we missed. And then lastly, if you're having any problems with the audio or with the technical aspects of the webinar, please feel free to enter those into the chat panel. Before we introduce today's speakers, I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So I think the first step is really defining the difference between metrics, KPIs, SLA, what are the purposes for each, how do you differentiate between the three, and then all of the strategy behind how do you select those metrics that are really going to work best for you and make those metrics into an operational dashboard that can help you manage on a day-to-day basis. And again, we'll wrap up with questions from there. But with that, I'd like to introduce you to Tommy Gunn, who is a strategic advisor at Aware Manager. He previously worked at Philips as former head of global real estate there and has a long history and a good tenure in facility management. So he's going to walk us through the first part of today's presentation, which is going to focus on the strategy element of how you set these things up. And then Kelly Sharon, who is an account executive here at Aware Manager, will follow Tommy and actually walk through some practical examples of how to use technology to really measure these KPIs. So with that, I will hand it over to Tommy.
Good afternoon. Hope everyone can hear me okay now. I had a little technical trouble with my headset. So I thought I'd start this afternoon with an introduction of what KPIs and metrics and SLAs are and how they all fit together. So service level agreements is really the start of the process, and service level agreements are set the expectations for performance. Key performance indicators are those key metrics that display the contribution a department or organization makes towards the mission of a company or its department. Basically, most metrics feed up into a KPI, and I'm going to go through a very specific working example in a moment. So a KPI is a fundamental metric that defines topmost level of success. KPIs basically provide a map or story of the overall performance of the organization. An important note is that all metrics are not KPIs. So if we think about my working example, essentially think of it that a department or organization agrees to provide a service level agreement to deliver corrective maintenance work orders on time by priority. In this very specific example, we're going to say that there are 4 priorities. And we're going to take a look at the P1 priorities, and in this example, P1 priorities must be completed or addressed within 2 hours of receipt, and they at the end of at a rate of 99.5%. And essentially, that means that all P1s need to be completed within that 2-hour window at a rate of 99.5% for on-time completion. So the P1 work orders cover 20 work classifications in this example. Those work classifications could be such things as general maintenance, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, cleaning, grounds, etc. And each one of those work classifications has its own on-time completion metric. These metrics roll up to the P1 KPI for P1 completion for this SLA example. KPIs and metrics are very important to watch trends, and we'll get into why in a moment. Metrics can become a very powerful tool to help you track and assist in improving your performance. If we think about preventative maintenance work orders, and you track those in this particular example I'll use, is PM work orders will say have an average completion time for a task of 20 minutes. Essentially in this example, I'll say that there are 20 engineers and each one of them are assigned the same task to complete. At the end of the month, when someone does an evaluation of all those completed work orders, we find that 19 of the 20 engineers completed their work orders consistently within the 20-minute window. But there's one engineer who completes that in excess of the 20 minutes, and usually we'll say in the 35 to 38-minute range. What this allows the facility organization or specific manager or chief engineer to do is to take a look and determine why is this one individual consistently completing the work orders way outside the task norm. It may be a performance issue, but it could be a skill issue. And it could be that this one engineer gets assigned a particular few pieces of equipment that are a lot more difficult to complete. But most importantly to understand is that it gives you the knowledge to go forward and take a look at why we can't complete that one particular location on time. Next, I'm going to go into designing the right metrics. So if we start at the left, first thing that you need to do is take a look at the organization. And essentially what I'm suggesting here is that you have to determine what is important to the company. What is their vision, what is their mission, and what is their values. Usually that translates into a very specific similar plan for the real estate department or facilities department, and then under that for the managers or engineers. I always come to the end and say, where does it fit? So some examples could be that maybe it's the mission of the organization, both the real estate facilities organization and the company in total, to have great customer service. So what are the things that you'd want to do? You'd want to make sure to understand what the timeliness of response was. What is the reliability of the services that you provide within that organization? What is the quality of the work that you do? What are the positive interactions that you have with your customers? Most of us in the facilities or real estate area have internal customers, but we need to understand how we're viewed by them and how that relates to the quality of services that we deliver. And as most of us know very well, managing your finances well certainly is one of the key areas that we always look at. For those of us who have worked for or within financial institutions, that is normally one of the very key areas that they look at for delivery of services. So some of the examples here could be what are the capital budgeting status, budget by month, by project. What are our costs from an expense level by category? How are we performing on a regular day-to-day level and by month, and how are we performing on our budget in comparison to the monthly requirement? It could be we could be working in a data center environment, and one of the key areas of things we would want to look at to measure there would be reliability. How do we manage scheduled downtime, and how do we measure that and ensure that we have the lowest impact? Certainly, as we know today with data centers and especially with distributed technologies, that data centers require 100% uptime most of the time, obviously, except for scheduled maintenance. How do we help design around that, and how do we measure that level? Improve critical system reliability. Today in the old days, we would always have X+1 or 2 for the design, so you had a complete backup system. Today, that necessarily doesn't happen anymore. Technology changes too quick. So how do we measure and how do we manage delivery of that service? And how do we perform the right maintenance at the right time? Again, trying to have minimal downtime for our customer. So when we think about designing the right metrics, some examples here. We take a look at, again, metrics are extracted pieces of data. What are the costs of services and materials, quality, quantity, status, temperatures, on and off, time, date, other location information, work order volumes. And we think of some of the other areas either to do with sustainability or customer service, call speed of answer, what's our energy footprint, our energy consumption by, not just by dollars, but by usage, carbon footprint, how do we reduce that, visitor information, preventative maintenance, corrective maintenance, projects, budgets, and I can go on and on. Mean time between failures, emergency work versus planned work, percent overtime, maintenance costs, contract costs, and it goes on and on. But I think you understand that what we're trying to drive at is you take these metrics for all these information, and we try to roll that up into those key performance indicators for quality of service. So strategic alignment, where do we start? Some months ago, Wear Manager put out a document, and the document was called the 5 Essential KPIs for Facility Management. What I would suggest, if you have an opportunity, is to take a look at that document, because within there's a little process called the SMART process. And the SMART process is a very good place to start. So you need to understand what are the specific KPIs. The KPI needs to be clear and focused towards performance targets. It has to be measurable. A KPI has to be expressed quantitatively. And they have to be attainable. KPI targets are reasonable and achievable. Too often I've seen that we try to set KPI targets out of a range that are even reasonable to assume that we can achieve. And tied to that is realistic. The KPI has to be directly related to what is being measured. And time-based. The KPI can be measured in a specific time period. So this should give us a start of what we're looking at and try to go from there. Now, as I move forward, these are some examples that we've extracted from our database. And what I try to do is, I'm going to give you just some of the examples here, but I'm going to give you some things that are always very important to me. So when I was in the field and as a manager, either in a real estate organization or within the facilities organization, things that I would always drill in on and trying to look at. Yes, I always had to look at finances, but to me, the service delivery was always the most important, some of the important metrics and KPIs I would look at. And what you see here is work orders. You see the green is the work orders that are on time, those that are overdue. The idea here is that my idea would be that every morning when I walked into my computer, I would have a little screen that would pop up, and it would have 3 colors on it. It would be red, yellow, and green. And I would know from there that the red ones were the ones that were overdue, and the green ones were the ones that were on time. And I was always focused on my relationship with my customer, and I would want to know what those red ones consisted of and why they were late. So I would drill into them every single solitary day. Those were some of my key pieces. And as we get ready to take a look at what a dashboard would look like, we'll come back to that particular graph there. What you also see in this example here is some budgetary information. How are we performing on our budget by month? What's left to spend? And up at the top, another important piece that we now look at all the time is risk. And what you see here is how many contracts do we have that are about to expire? That becomes very important information. Insurance certificates that are either have expired or are coming due. Equipment warranties. All of these pieces of information now become very important and things that we track as metrics, i.e. up to KPIs. Also, if you see here, collected, I always put my metrics are divided into 4 or 5 buckets. I look at financial, operational, strategic, value add, sustainability, and in this case, visitor management. What you see on the right side here is also spending by department. This again drills down to the earlier example. We would assume that what would happen is when you take a look at the entire real estate organization, you take those, we'll say it starts at the organizational level, and it shows your on-time, it shows your budget performance by month, but you're able to hit one of those bars, it drills down, it shows it can show the expenditures by building. As you hit the building, it can drive down and show it by department, by general ledger item, etc., all the way down. Now, one of the other metrics that I find very, very important to me and always measures success is that I always try to take a look at proactive work orders. And the definition to me of a proactive work order is self-generated work orders. And it's probably one of the most difficult to get a handle on, because my experience has been that most of our engineers are reluctant to take the time to fill out a work order to show work that they've self-performed. But I also find it to be probably one of the most important metrics that we can track. Because what it shows is it shows a customer the amount of work that we do each and every day and what contribution we make. The important point to always make to a customer is that if we're proactively identifying that work, and you as the customer do not have to take the time out to actually either call in a work order, send in an email or a fax to a centralized location, what happens is we're allowing the customer to do the core work that's really what is the mission of the organization. And as we kind of see today, a lot of the smart building technology, we know that there are lights now that have become smart lights, where if a light either is about to fail or goes out, it can be proactively notify a facilities organization through a building management system, so that you are able to replace the light ahead of it actually failing. I've actually seen, paper products that actually have the ability to notify the organization when they're about to run out. So there's a lot of changes occurring within the organization as well. So all of these can be added into your focus on how you measure the operation's success.
Thank you, Tommy. At this time, I'm Kelly. I'm the account executive here to Ware Manager that Courtney mentioned, and I'm going to take over and just show a very brief demonstration of the tool that we provide here at Ware Manager, that allows you to actually see a dashboard and create a dashboard of your key performance indicators. So as Tommy mentioned, one of the things you can do here is you can actually break out your KPIs into different quadrants. So you're looking at, in this case, I have it broken out first by financial, then by operational, by risk, and by strategic. So what the tool allows you to do is kind of separate your data, summarize it, and then drill in. So if we look at something like on the left, you can summarize your data. And then on the right-hand side, you can kind of have a more drilled in version of that, say by month. And again, kind of look at it a little bit differently, what's remaining, look at it by department. And so you can really break out that data when you look at kind of what is the most important kind of overall number, but then what within that do you need to know? Also within the tool, it's going to be very interactive. So you can look at things, of course, like as pie charts or bar graphs, as Tommy mentioned, but you can also look at things a little bit differently, like on a map, for example. And so these are very interactive, where you have the ability to, say, scroll your mouse over and look at this metric happens to be completion percentage on time. And this one, see Chicago is not doing very well. And again, you can scroll over all of these. As you click into a specific location, it will actually filter the remainder of your dashboard. So you see the chart on the right actually changes to look at that particular location. And so you have this very dynamic view of your data, and you're able to drill in and interact with it. And you can do that in other instances as well. So as Tommy mentioned, looking at, priorities, I think you mentioned that earlier, is something that's really important. A lot of our customers are measuring that. But if you'd say want to look at work order by status and instead look at it by work category or work type, you're able to drill into that and change the way that you're looking at your data. So you can constantly interact with that raw data that you're getting from your facility management tool. And you're really not limited to any particular type. You know, there's certainly more than just bar graphs and line charts here. You can do things with calendars, and this is kind of a calendar heat map, looking at your PMs that are upcoming. You can also do area charts, or you know, look at things as a table, like in our risk example. And you can take data that's not necessarily linked, but bring it together into one place. So certainly insurance and contracts or in equipment warranties are different things, but they're all fall into that category of your expirations. So what this will allow you to do is look at that by, you know, what's expired and what's a current risk, but also to see a little bit into what might be coming as a risk in the next 30 days or 60 days, or even further out if you'd like. And then you can, of course, again, like the other areas, break that down by type or by location, or by specific pieces of equipment for things like warranties. And it really is giving you a really broad picture of your operations and what you're getting from your facility management tool. One last thing is the strategic area. So one of the things Tommy mentioned, and if you've read the KPI white paper that we put out, and we can send that to people after this as well, is the strategic metrics. And when we look at these, first one we look at is this energy reduction, energy consumption. That's not necessarily something you may track in your facility management tool, or that we track in the Aware Manager facility management tool, but this tool allows you to bring in data from spreadsheets, from other softwares, to really compile it kind of into one dashboard for you. On the other side of that is your projects. So when we talk about energy consumption, that can also be really looked at through projects and some of the green initiatives that you may be taking as an organization. I hear that a lot from our customers, that, you know, we're really trying to reduce paper, we're trying to be more green overall. And so some of the things that may drive that can be broken out into different projects. So while the overall metric is that we've got 67% of green initiative projects have started, we might want to drill in a little bit further and see, of those projects, where do each stand in terms of their completion? And that is a metric that we track in our facility management tools. We do it Aware Manager, and I know that's something that a lot of our customers do. You're able to kind of see that broken out to see where you are in terms of the initiatives. So these are just examples. I want everyone to keep in mind that one of the things Tommy really drives, and when we talk to him and when he's working with our customers, is that KPIs are really going to be driven by your organization and the things that are important, all the way from the C-level suite that they're driving down into your organization. And what I'm showing you here today is just an example of how you can use the Aware Manager IQ tool to be able to visualize all of those. So keep in mind, these are completely customizable, and again, they're just examples for you here. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Courtney to ask some questions. I'm sure we have some from the audience.
Thanks, Kelly. We got a bunch of questions about kind of the philosophy of how you set up metrics. Tommy, one of the questions that was asked a couple of times was about, you know, what challenges did you encounter when you were trying to set KPIs, and how did you get everybody aligned with each other?
Well, I think probably the biggest challenge that I've run into in my career has been when you try to develop strategic metrics / KPIs. They tend to be a little bit more difficult to define and to measure. When you think of operational KPIs and metrics, they tend to be fairly clear-cut. So work orders have a defined start and a defined end. Sometimes there's a little debate about how do you measure the start and the finish. But if you think back to my example of every work order has to be, in a P1, my P1 example has to be completed or addressed within 2 hours, that's a pretty definable component. When you think about strategic initiatives, they're a little bit more difficult to define. So one of the biggest challenges I've had in my career is how you define strategic initiatives and get them to be measurable. The second area that has been somewhat difficult is customer service tends to be a very important metric up to a KPI to measure. The challenge is getting the customer to fill out the customer satisfaction surveys honestly and consistently. The other second part of that challenge is in some organizations, it is one or two people or a particular admin in an area that does all of the work orders submittal. So you get the same feedback from the same person time and time again. So those would be a couple of examples of difficulty that I've had in my career.
Another question for you, Tommy, is about, what are the KPIs that you really found really helpful that were reviewed, or what were those that you looked at every day when you first came into work?
Really, well, I've touched on two of them. The first one I always take a look at, especially in facilities management, is on-time completion of my work orders. I would always, normally there, in my experience, has been 4 to 5 levels of priority. I normally would focus on the top 3 initially, P1s, 2s, and 3s, and find out where we are and why things are not on track. And if you recall my example of taking a look at proactive work orders, those were a key area for me, probably one of my most important ones. And what I would try to look at on a daily or certainly a weekly basis would be not so much to take a look at the specifics of that particular reading, but it's more the trend. Watching the trends in metrics and KPIs is so important. I wanted to know, are we seeing a decline in self-generated work orders? And this could be tells a story. Is it, if it's July and August, a lot of times you'll see a reduction in self-generated work orders simply because if it high vacation periods and you don't have the same level of work hours available to you that you do during the normal year. Sometimes if you're shorthanded, it could show a trend. But again, trending to me, watching those, not just taking the single snapshot, but taking the bigger picture over a period of time, helps tell the story. Hope that answers your question.
And kind of along those lines, or building on that, what role does historical reporting play in all of this? So thinking about, when did you look at year-over-year comparisons, and how did that help you in kind of assessing the performance of your team?
Well, I constantly looked at the performance, not just in the short term. Again, if you go back to my constant focus on trends, I would take a look at the 90-day window and opposed to the year view. And the year view would go back to a 1-year period from that month. So if we're in March of 2017, I'd want to see the trends and how they occurred since March of 2016. And that's in all areas. What are some of the changes that we're seeing in customer satisfaction? How's our performance on budget? Were we given less money to do the same type of work? Had some things in the regulatory world change that have caused us to spend more money in a particular area? Again, the important point is metrics and KPIs. There's a lot of information, but it's using that information to manage your portfolio and to watch the trends. I can't stress trends enough. That's really what tells the story, and the story is what helps you budget and manage your portfolio.
Switching over to Kelly, thanks again, Tommy. Kelly, we got a couple of questions about kind of the mechanics of using Aware Manager IQ. So I know you mentioned what's customizable in the dashboards. Can you just go over that again?
Absolutely. So like I mentioned earlier, these are just examples. So if you really think about your dashboard as a compilation of, the first thing kind of being the actual data, and then secondly, how do you want to visualize that? So certainly different types of metrics will lend themselves to different types of charts, right? So if you're looking at something, year over year, you may be looking at a line graph versus if you're looking at, you want to see your portfolio, you may want to look at the map. So what you have the ability to do in Aware Manager IQ is to really look at all of the different kind of, think about first, what is the thing that you want to measure? And then secondly, think about, okay, how can you put that into a chart or graph? And so in Aware Manager IQ, you have the choice of really any of the types of things that you see. So that will be bar graphs, line charts, area charts, kind of these summary numbers, maps, tables, sunburst charts. So there's a lot of different things a lot of different ways you can really visualize that data. And so there's really no set way you have to look at any particular metric. We certainly have some metrics that a lot of our customers like to look at and some popular ways they like to look at them, but you really aren't tied to any one particular way. And that's even down to the colors and the sizes and all of the language on it as well.
Yeah, I think a good example of what Kelly was speaking about is if you were looking at that last row of information that she showed around the different green projects, for example, if you wanted to have one of those highlighted in yellow, if it didn't meet a certain threshold, or highlighted in red, if it met an even lower threshold, you could do things like that to really be able to very quickly see visually what you need to be paying attention to. Kelly, somebody asked, about the importance of having multiple dashboards. Is that possible? Is it recommended that people have one dashboard for everything? What's your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. So typically what we'll see with our customers is a little bit of a role-based approach. So your senior level executives really want to see those summary numbers. They really want to see how everything is rolled up, whereas your teams in the field may be really focused on the day-to-day, how many preventative maintenance work orders do I still have open this month as I kind of come to the end of my month. Things like that are much more granular. And so in the tool, we accomplish that by, we have kind of a menu on the left where you can have different folders and then different dashboards within those folders. And based on your role in the organization, you may have access to one or two of those. You may have, again, if you're a system admin, you may have access to all, but it really allows the individuals to see exactly what they need to see. And then I don't think I mentioned it while I was demonstrating the product. These dashboards can all actually be emailed automatically on a desired frequency. So for example, if you typically send your manager a report at the end of the month that kind of summarizes your team's performance, that can actually be automated through the tool. I know one use case that's really popular for that is one of our customers, and in particular I have in mind, but a lot of our customers do this type of thing, is they have a meeting with their team every Monday morning, and they take a look at the performance from the previous week. And so that everybody gets their dashboard emailed to them. And so you're not asking your team to log in and do anything like that. They're just kind of seeing it visually in the morning before they go into that meeting, and they're able to have a quick look at their performance in the previous week and use it as a talking point of where they could improve, where they feel like they did really well.
Thanks, Kelly. One other question we just received was about how Aware Manager IQ and also Aware Manager in general can interact with other types of systems. So whether it's BMS or metering and monitoring, asset management, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about, our philosophy around integrations and how we typically approach those things?
Absolutely. So a lot of our customers are, using a lot of different technologies, BMS being, a big one. And so what this tool allows you to do is, I think it can take something like 20-something different data types in. It can also take data from spreadsheets and things like that. So we can take data as a kind of a feed from other pieces of software or more as a flat file. And then we can really integrate all of that into one dashboard. So if you want to look at data from your BMS, you can visualize that in here as well. Or, financial systems, it really has the ability to accommodate a lot of different data types.
And more broadly, I think, our philosophy around integration as we've looked at the industry has really kind of evolved to the fact that I think we're all realizing that one software cannot do everything and do everything perfectly. So taking a best of breed approach where, we can cover the facility and the asset side of the house, but understanding that there are also probably other systems that you're using to manage other aspects of operations, and how do those systems need to talk and communicate so you're not, running crazy between all the different software programs. So that's something that we can definitely talk more about if anybody has specific questions about other specific software or applications that they're thinking about. If there are any other questions, please feel free to enter them now. We've answered all the questions we've received so far, but while we're waiting to see if any more are going to come in, like Tommy mentioned, we do have a white paper that really kind of addresses some of the challenges that we talked about today in a little bit more detail. And we'll make sure to share that along with a recording later this afternoon. But with that, I think we're okay for today. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, and thank you for Tommy and Kelly's time today and for walking us through the presentation. And again, I'll send out a quick email later today with a link to the recording, a link to the white paper. And if you have any questions from there, we'll take it from there. So thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.